Rams house, could Matthew Stafford play several more seasons? A viral quote from him on a recent podcast appearance, kind of going viral on Twitter right now, seems to suggest exactly that. We're going to break it all down and more on today's episode of the Rams Report. Welcome in, guys, to a brand new episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks. Like I said off the top, today we are talking about our guy, Matthew Stafford, the MVP. He had an appearance. The video just came out today on YouTube on Chris Long's Greenlight podcast. You may remember Chris Long as a long-term member of this Rams team, one of the kind of anchors of that defense, and not very good Rams teams. Completely honest with you, but in the early 2000s and for 1 year in LA, if I remember correctly as well, Chris Long was with this franchise before eventually going off to be a Philadelphia Eagle where he would win a Super Bowl, and he also got one with the Patriots as well. I believe he's a two-time Super Bowl champion. He's also an NFL Man of the Year winner, and he hosts his podcast Greenlight where he has many different guests on. Today's guest, though, Matthew Stafford, and they talked about a bunch of different things, but the first thing that they talked about, and the number one thing that's really going viral right now, is the discussion around Stafford's longevity and what Stafford has planned next for his career, and really how long he intends to play. He gave some pretty interesting quotes on that show that we are going to break down in depth today. But before we get to it, drop a like on today's video if you are fired up for this season, guys. Every time I see these guys on podcasts, whether it is Stafford, we talked about Kyron Williams recently going out on a podcast. We were talking about Puka's first media comments recently. It just gets me more fired up for this 2026 season, for how good this Rams team is going to be, and to finally get to watch them not talk on podcasts, but play some damn football. Get the pads on. Let's go, man. I am excited for this year. It is going to be such a great season of Rams football, and if you're half as fired up as I am, I need you to drop a like on today's show. But here's the quote that's really going viral. Here's the quote that people are really honing in on. One of the things that surprised me, he says, and this was when he was asked, what did you hear from Tom Brady and Drew Brees when you talked to them about playing for as long as they did? He said, one of the things that surprised me, I was talking to Drew, this was before last season, and he was like, how old are you again? And I was like, I'm 37. And he's like, you might have your best 5 years of your career coming up. And I was like, huh? You know, I'd never thought about it that way. And again, that was before last season, coming into Stafford's age 37 season. And Brees Stradamus over here basically predicts an MVP year from Matthew Stafford, telling him you might have the best 5 years of your career coming up. Well, at least so far, so good on that prediction from Drew Brees as Matthew Stafford immediately turns in an MVP campaign. But I think there's a reason why Brees is saying this, guys, because you look at the final 4 seasons of Brees' career, all of which were after the age of 37, from age 38 to 41, this guy went out balling. If you don't remember how Brees went out, it was absolutely phenomenal. Still at the top of his game with 11, 12 games played in the final 2. I mean, again, like, he wasn't at the peak of his powers anymore. Obviously, we'd seen Brees be even better, but still completing north of 70% of his passes, 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions at 41 years old. His 2 seasons over the age of 40, he had over 50 touchdowns and just 10 picks. But I will tell you guys, just because Stafford talked to Drew Brees about these next 5 years potentially being the best 5 of his career does not give you a guarantee he's going to play the 5 seasons. And we're going to break down exactly what Stafford's timeline might look like and more from him on what he intends for that timeline to be, or how at least he's approaching it, what that he said on Chris Light's Greenlight podcast, on today's show. But before we do that, I got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, guys, and that is Prize Picks. Guys, if you love daily fantasy or you just want to add more excitement to watching sports, you've got to try out Prize Picks. And it's a great time to get started on Prize Picks, too, with the World Cup underway, guys. It is so easy to put together a Prize Picks lineup. Guys, I've never been a huge soccer fan, but I'm really getting into the World Cup, and Prize Picks is a huge part of the reason why. It's so easy for me to put together a lineup, just pick more or less on some player stat projections, whether I'm picking from goals, shots on target, saves for a goalie. It's all so easy, and it just makes watching those games even more exciting than they already are. Makes it so much easier for me to get into them. So you guys can tail me or fade me on the lineup I've got going for today's World Cup matches, and that one is $9.27 to pay $39.40. You can tail it or fade it with just one click when you drop a follow on my Prize Picks account, Jackson Durham, with no spaces. And if you're brand new to Prize Picks, make sure you use a promo code. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. As always, thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to discussing this because, again, and I hate to be the guy who says Matthew Stafford isn't going to play much longer. Again, that's not really what I'm saying. I do think Matthew Stafford could play several more seasons, but just because he said this does not guarantee he's going to play 5 more. And that isn't because he isn't capable of doing it. I mean, like right now, he looks absolutely capable of playing that many more seasons. But you could tell from the other things that he said, outside of this quote, the one that's kind of going really viral on Twitter right now, that may not exactly be the mindset. He's definitely taking it year by year. Here's what he had to say. It is year to year because I think it's fair to me, it's fair to the team, my family. And I don't want to sit there and say 24 months from now, I've got to be ready to play another football season. Like that just seems like a lot. I know that I'm ready to play this year. And hopefully I feel great at the end of next year, and I'm ready to play another one after that, and then maybe we just kind of keep going like that. But committing to more than that feels a little bit daunting, and I think a little bit unfair to the team and myself. He finishes here. The last thing I want to do is sign some 5-year extension, and after 1 year be like, oh man, I'm ready to retire. I want to spend time with my family, and they're sitting there with 4 years on the books. Again, guys, I cannot make it more clear. Stafford is making year-to-year decisions. Even after 2026, he makes it really clear here, it's still going to be a decision. It's still going to be a moment where he has to go back, sit with himself, sit with his family, sit with this Rams team, and say, do we want to do this again? Do I want to take another ride at that? And of course, that's going to depend on how this season goes, both for this Rams team. If they accomplish the goal of going out and winning a Super Bowl at SoFi Stadium, that might change the calculus. If Stafford suffers any sort of injury, God forbid, that would, of course, change the calculus. But I think a mindset like this is very telling of the guy, the man that Stafford is at the end of the day, of the kind of person that Matthew Stafford is. The way he approaches this decision is selfless at the end of the day. I think it truly is. It's a concern not just for, obviously he's thinking about his own body, but he's thinking primarily, when you listen to him talk about this, about his family, first and foremost, of course, but also about this Rams team. It is very clear that he has a real concern for what their future looks like without him and for helping them handle that transition and the role he knows he can play in that, both from a financial perspective and, as he says, making sure that they don't have 4 years left on the books if he decides to call it quits, but also in how it pertains to their now QB of the future, ideally, Ty Simpson. So let's have this conversation. What would it mean for Ty if Matthew Stafford did stick around? Let's just say Matthew Stafford plays this season. He feels great coming off of it, even though we do win a Super Bowl. Let's just even throw that in. We win the Super Bowl. Matthew Stafford still feels great, though. He wants another ride after that. Okay, great. We're playing in 2027. That's 2 years into Simpson's career. But then he wants another ride into 2028. And so he goes for 3 more seasons. What does that look like for Ty Simpson? What would that mean for him, and how would it affect his development? I think really positively. Stafford spoke about his relationship with Ty, and when Chris Long asked him, what do you hope that Ty Simpson would say about you 15 years from now, when he's asked, what kind of role did Matthew Stafford play to you? What do you remember about Matthew Stafford? Here's what Stafford had to say. Hopefully he comes away with a guy that treated him the right way, showed him what it was about, what it's like to be a true professional, and also to be yourself, right? I'm not some robot out there. I love playing the game. You see me mic'd up. I run around, yell like crazy, do all sorts of wild shit, and have fun with the game because it is a kid's game. But at the same time, I'm here for him if he needs help. And my God, I'm sure he does. He talks about it all the time, how he worries he's annoying Matthew Stafford and Stetson Bennett because he's constantly blowing up those guys' phones, because he's constantly in their ear during practice, asking them all sorts of questions, making sure he uses those resources. And we've heard time and time again, not just from Ty himself, but from coaches, from reporters at practice, that Ty is maximizing his resources, both in Stafford and in his coaching staff and Nate Scheelhaas and Sean McVay, but also in Stetson himself, who is an experienced guy at the NFL level at this point, not as a player, but he has several years being in the NFL, and he is a two-time national champion. You can learn from that guy as well. And again, I think it goes back to a conversation that we've had before. There is a model to follow here. If Ty sits for 3 years, then that's fine. That's okay. That means he's on the Jordan Love track. And I'm okay with him being on the Jordan Love track. Jordan Love's been a great quarterback at the NFL level. Jordan Love's been great for the Packers. Jordan Love seems to be on the track of guiding that Packers team to all the success that they're hoping they can have over the next couple of seasons. And if they don't, I really don't think it's going to be because Jordan Love was the problem. We've seen him rise to the occasion time and time again and be a really good player in this league. I think Ty Simpson can have the same kind of track, and I don't think that Jordan Love's success is independent or coincidental to the fact that he spent 3 years sitting behind one of the greatest to ever do it, and Ty Simpson has the same opportunity. Because again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I view Matthew Stafford as in that same category as an Aaron Rodgers, as in that same category as any of the greatest in NFL history as far as talent goes and his ability to bestow knowledge about playing this position and being a professional to another quarterback, especially a young guy like Ty Simpson. I'm just not really worried about him at all. I think the longer he spends coalescing with Matthew Stafford in the system that the Rams have, it's only going to be to his benefit. We've even heard tremendous growth from Stetson Bennett, who at the end of the day, and I say this with all due respect, is half the prospect that Ty Simpson is. At the end of the day, I think Ty Simpson is a moldable ball of clay right now that the Rams can continue to mold and that can continue to sponge up information. And sitting for more years, at the end of the day, it's only going to be to his benefit because by the time he gets into the saddle as the starter, he is going to be a seasoned veteran, finally taking the reins of an offense he has a deep understanding of because he spent years learning the playbook, years learning the system, and years getting to know his teammates. I think it's only going to set him up for success. I'm not worried at all, but how do you feel? I want to know in the comments, scale it 1 to 10, how worried are you about Ty Simpson potentially sitting for multiple seasons, about Ty Simpson's timeline, or maybe even just kind of the pick of Ty Simpson at this point if Stafford was to stick around? Because I absolutely still see the vision. I absolutely understand why having a Ty Simpson still makes sense, even if Stafford does at the end of the day play for multiple years. You just don't know what he's going to do, and you don't want to be without a plan if he decides at the end of this year, I've actually had enough. Like, I want to go retire and be with my family. He himself even indicates in these quotes that we talked about today, that's not out of the realm of possibility. That's why he doesn't want to commit to a long-term extension, because he knows there is a slim chance, but a real chance, that he makes that call. Again, we appreciate you guys tuning in on today's episode. As always, it's going to wrap it up for us today on the Rams Report. Thank you for tuning in, as always. And we will see you in the next one. We're going to be breaking down some of the discussions around extensions for our offensive line. We're going to take it position by position, player by player, who's sticking around and who might be off this roster after 2027 as cap crunch starts to come for this Rams team. We will see you then. Make sure you tune in and hit that subscribe button.